Hello, I'm Dr. Patrick McGrath, the Chief Clinical Officer at OCD, and welcome to another episode of Get to Know OCD. Today, we'll be talking about relationship OCD. We're glad you're here. If you like the information that we have, please subscribe. Sometimes we will do shows like this where we'll talk about a specific topic. Other times we'll have guests on who will talk about what it's like to live with OCD and how they've worked through their obsessive compulsive disorder. So stay tuned. We're excited to have you here. Relationship OCD, or ROCD, as it's sometimes called, is obsessive compulsive disorder specifically about your relationships. Most of the time, that will be a romantic relationship, but it could be about any other relationship as well. Now, there are things that all of us might do with relationships that on the surface could feel what sometimes people would say a little OCD. Nobody likes that phrase, by the way. So check out a previous podcast on that one. But we may all wonder why someone hasn't texted us back. We may all wonder if they're thinking about us. There are times in any relationship we have that we have doubts or uncertainties. Those are normal, natural, human types of things. OCD, however, does not accept that things are normal or natural or human types of things. OCD always wants to go to the worst case scenario. And if your relationship is really important to you, well, guess what? OCD is going to pick on it. And OCD is going to say, is it good enough? How do you really know? Are you actually attracted to each other? What if it's not enough? Hey, the neighbors, they seem to hold hands more than you and your partner do. Does that mean that they love each other more than you? This can be so very difficult for people who have a relationship-based obsessive compulsive disorder problem because what does OCD demand? Certainty. It wants no doubt whatsoever. But guess what OCD's nickname is? The doubting disorder. And what will happen if you have the doubting disorder? Well, you'll doubt everything. So that means no matter what answer you give to OCD, it will say, not quite. Maybe a little bit more. Could you just find out some more information for me? OCD doubts everything. So here's the conundrum you find yourself in. The doubting disorder demands an absolute answer, and the doubting disorder will not accept an answer as ever being absolute because, well, it's the doubting disorder. This is the problem. When you have the doubting disorder, you doubt everything. You can't give an absolute answer to obsessive compulsive disorder because it won't accept it. Why? Because it doubts everything. Therefore, you're in this conundrum where you have a disorder that's demanding an absolute answer, but will never accept it. This can be an issue then in relationships because we may think to ourselves, I need a guarantee that this relationship is the best relationship. It's the right relationship. It's the one relationship that this is my soulmate. This is the person I'm supposed to be with. And OCD really wants you to buy into the notion that this might not be the right one. There might be something else out there that's better for you. Now, if you don't have OCD, you probably know this. There are times in your relationship where you and your partner might not be on the best terms, that you might even consider, I wonder if I want to stay in this relationship anymore. There are times that you may be walking down the street and see someone and think, wow, they're beautiful. Look how attractive they are. So handsome, whatever it might be. Does that mean that you're not stable in your relationship, that you're not good enough in your relationship? Well, if you have relationship OCD, it's going to say, yep, that's exactly what that means. Not good enough for sure. You need to only be attracted to your partner and you need to only want to be with your partner. And if you have ever a doubt or insecurity about that, well, this might be the wrong relationship. So let's set a few things straight, right? Everyone in the world has doubts and insecurities about things. It's part of being a human, right? I have doubts and insecurities about all sorts of stuff, and I treat obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't know right now if my niece and nephew are fine. Something terrible could be happening to them. I don't know. But I'm also not going to leave this podcast, go call them to see, hey, I just thought something about you. Are you okay? Because I don't believe that my thoughts make things happen. In OCD, we call that thought action fusion, the notion that thinking something is just as bad as it actually happening. And boy, does thought action fusion really come through in relationship OCD. Because once we start thinking about doubts about our relationship, we start to believe that they might actually be true. So then what do? We have to do compulsions. We have to do things to try to neutralize it. And some of these compulsions can actually be harmful to relationships. For example, we might test our partner over and over again to see, do they really love us? We might pick an argument to try to see how they react to it. And if they react to it okay, we think, phew, all right, good. We're still together. We're still okay. We're still fine. But what if the next argument is the one that really breaks us up? Oh, I better test that just to see because I would hate for this to break up. So I'm going to test it out to see how it goes. Well, after a while, your partner could get to a point of saying, listen, I'm done with this. I don't like this. This is not working for me. I don't want to be tested. And then guess what relationship OCD does? Oh no. Oh my. We better really test this now to make sure that things are going to be okay because we wouldn't want to lose them. So let's keep testing to make sure that everything's fine. And when OCD keeps going down the road of hammering the same thing over and over and over again, it doesn't end well. No one with OCD would tell you that using OCD as a way to solve problems or get through life is a great way to live. That's not what anybody would ever say. So the goal is going to become, how do we overcome the influence of relationship OCD in a relationship? And it really will take two in this situation. One thing that I've had people do in relationships is I've said, we're going to get a notebook. We're going to take that notebook and we're going to put it on a table, dining room table, kitchen table, whatever. And if you are the partner of the person with relationship OCD, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down any question that you have been asked more than once that is related to your relationship. And then I want you to write down the answer to that question. And if the person with relationship OCD ever asks that question or wants to go down that road again, you just point to the book and say, my love, I've already answered that. It's in the book. There's no need for us to discuss it anymore. Now, the person with relationship OCD will be like, yeah, but it's slightly different, or I want something else. And your job as a partner is to say, we've agreed. We're not going to talk about that ever again. You have my answer, and that is my answer. Now, if you're familiar with OCD treatment, which is called exposure and response prevention therapy, this is part of that, where we're not doing compulsions anymore. We're not using our partner to give us reassurance. One of those 5 safety behaviors of avoidance, reassurance seeking, distraction, substance use, and compulsions. We want to work on eliminating those from the relationship because they're not actually helping it. They're actually pulling it down. And on the surface, you might think, well, that's so cruel. Why wouldn't you want to talk to your partner about this? But if you've had that conversation already over 100 times, why does it need to be had again? What new will come out of that? That conversation is actually not a conversation in service of the relationship. That conversation is a conversation in service of obsessive compulsive disorder. Because OCD is doing a couple of things in that conversation. Number one, it's kind of hoping you'll give a different answer this time, because if you do, we have a lot of things to talk about why today you gave me a different answer from other times. And number two, it's reassuring and it feels good for the moment. And boy, if that isn't what compulsions are all about, doing something to feel good right now in the moment. But it doesn't lead you to feel better later on in the long term. And that's really what we want for people. We want them to feel better in the long term, not just what can I do right now to feel good in the short term. If you want your relationship to be a long-lasting relationship, you have to work for things that are good for you in the long run and not just things that feel good right now in the moment. That's not a way to sustain a relationship. We know that this has a huge, huge impact on people's relationships, right? There are people who have unfortunately broken up because of relationship OCD. And then once the breakup occurs, guess what they do? all I do is think about the person that I was with and why can't I be with them anymore? And oh, I wish that I had them back. And what can I do to get them back and bring them back into the fold and do all of these things? Of course, when you were in the relationship, OCD put all sorts of doubts into that person. But now when they're gone, it'll flip the switch and it'll do all sorts of things the opposite way. This is the nature of obsessive compulsive disorder. And believe me, OCD can only do what is in its nature. It can't do anything else. Sometimes I describe it like if you remember the Peanuts cartoon, and Lucy would hold the football and Charlie Brown would go to kick it. And every single time he was about to kick it, she'd pick the football up and he'd go flying through the air and scream and land on his back. And Charles Schultz, even once in an interview, said, no matter how many times I do that skit, Charlie Brown will never kick the football. And in OCD, it's a very similar thing. No matter how many times you attempt to satisfy OCD, you never will, because OCD is never going to be satisfied. And it is in the nature of OCD to not be satisfied, because again, it is the doubting disorder. I want to work with couples to instill hope that there is a chance for their relationship to work. I want them to recognize that when you start to live for each other and not for what OCD says is the right thing to do in the relationship, you start to develop a relationship that you really do enjoy, that you really do love, and that you really do want to have. That's the work that we really want to see for people with relationship-based OCD. It's not easy work. I'm going to be honest with you. It can be very difficult because OCD, well, even when we start working on it, seems to get worse before it gets better. It's kind of like a kid in a candy store is used to getting rewarded in the candy store, who today we decide we aren't buying candy for them. That kid's going to throw the worst tantrum you've ever seen. And OCD is going to throw tantrums as well, too, because OCD wants what it wants. It wants that compulsion to happen. It wants that assurance from the compulsion that things are okay. Our goal is to live with the fact that we don't know for sure if everything's going to be okay or not. I have no guarantee when I leave doing this podcast today and I walk back upstairs that I won't fall down the stair. Should I never go up down the stairs again? Well, I'm going to, and I'm okay not having the guarantee on that. And that's what we want for the relationship as well, too. I'm hopeful that in hearing some of this, you might start to recognize how relationship OCD is getting in the way. If you have obsessions about your relationship, tons of intrusive thoughts or images that are involved with the relationship of seeing your partner maybe with someone else or looking at someone else or even urges that you want to get this assurance, you want to know these things, and you're doing these compulsive behaviors of testing them or having to hold hands because not because it's good for the relationship in the moment. You have to do it because OCD is telling you if you don't do it, then you're not comparing well to someone else. Don't do things for OCD. Or if you're doing mental acts where you're constantly reviewing the relationship, why did they say this? Why did they say it this way? What if I had said this to them? Would they have said this back to me instead? And could it have been a better conversation if we did this? All of these things, remember, are just in service of obsessive compulsive disorder and not of the relationship. There is help available. Work with a trained therapist who can assist you in not giving in to the compulsions. And they can help you to recognize when these obsessions occur to go and do the opposite, right? I once did a great interview with someone who talked about harm OCD was her theme. And she said that her OCD every morning when she walks downstairs and sees her dog says, maybe you want to harm your dog. And so what does she do every morning? She picks up her dog and she hugs her dog and she says, I must really love you a ton if my OCD is picking on you. To me, if you've got relationship OCD, it's usually a pretty darn good sign that that relationship is really important to you. But OCD is going to give you a different message, of course. All right. I hope this has been helpful and you've learned a little bit about how your relationship will not improve by bringing OCD into it. It will only improve by removing OCD from it so that the two of you can be together in such a way that you're living a life that you want to live together and not a life that OCD is driving you toward. If you've liked the information in here, please subscribe to the Get to Know OCD podcast. As we said, we'll be back again. Sometimes it will be me talking about various subtypes of OCD or new scientific information about OCD. Other times we'll have special guests on who will talk about what it's like for them to live with OCD and how they face the challenges of OCD. Either way, we'll try to make it fun and exciting for you so that you'll learn and you'll finally get to know what OCD really is. And remember, help's available. Check us out at nocd.com or treatmyocd.com and have a free 15-minute call with one of our care team members to set up a therapy appointment if you feel like OCD therapy might be helpful for you. Thanks. We'll see you again.